All right, so even though it's 1 minute early, I'll get started because I'm renowned for running overtime. Those who don't know me, my name is Rob Stroud. I work for Forrester Research. I am an analyst in the DevOps domain. I took over that role about a year ago from my predecessor, Amy DiMartine. But I have been involved in DevOps in former roles on and off since 2008. So hopefully we'll have a good time today. And my objective of today is to share significant research that we have on where DevOps is, where it's heading, and even a few tips and techniques on how to move ahead. So the first thing I want to start with is I do a lot of interviews and discussions with IT organisations and business organisations. And one thing is consistent. And recently I was with the CIO of a large insurance organisation and I got to address a town hall. And the first thing she said was that our predominant value prop that we have is speed. Speed to market, time to value, and delivering. We need to deliver with velocity to keep up with the fintechs in the organisation. But one of the challenges is that we just can't be fast for the sake of being fast, because speed without quality really doesn't work. So not only do we need to be fast, but we need to actually deliver quality as well. You know, one example of one DevOps organisation I can tell you about, they decided to go totally cloud, public cloud, and they covered or surrounded their traditional apps with an API, and they went cloud. And one of the things they did as they went to cloud, they just focused on speed. So what they found is their defects went up, they consistently delivered more and more defects, and those defects caused problems and issues with their organisation, who then said to them, look, we need to now deliver quality, so they went backwards and put a whole load of process in place. So the reality is that not only do you want to be fast, but you've got to deliver speed with quality. You've got to create value. Busy work and just doing things quickly is not enough. Ideating on a theme or a product is great, but if you're not adding business value, you're not doing the right things. So the reality is it's also not the speed of the current project, but we're actually moving to product teams. And in product teams, we actually want to deliver products and services that create competitive advantage, that deliver value to our customers or stakeholders, and also grow our competitive advantage. Now, in terms of research, one of the things about DevOps up until recently was DevOps is really about dev and no ops, to be really serious. It was development saying, you know, with Agile, and the Agile Manifesto is over 15 years old, for those who don't know. And when we came up with the Agile Manifesto, it was really about velocity. So up until 12 months ago, and I do this annual metric, we found that development organisations are about 60 to 70% adopted in Agile, and they're delivering quite quickly, and ops were not. Up until this year, ops are running at a rate of Agile ops or rapid ops of about 30%. This year, what we found in our recent survey is that ops have finally woken up and realised that they actually have to deliver with velocity as much as development. So the velocity is accelerating. You can see this, and I'm really happy to share this stat with you. This stat went live just 2 weeks ago, but 90% of organisations surveyed identified as they have implemented, at 13%, implementing or expanding their DevOps implementation, and at 50%, and then another 27% are planning to implement DevOps in the next 12 months. That means 90% of organisations are doing DevOps. Let's be very clear, 9-0. DevOps has absolutely reached escape velocity. It is becoming business as usual. It is becoming the norm. And I can share this with you. By Forrester, the DevOps organisation is one of the busiest in terms of customer inquiry calls right now. And I can also share with you, these inquiries are not just coming from practitioners, they are coming from CIOs and enterprise architects. Now the questions are different in each group, and I'll touch on them as we move forward, but the reality of it is that we are clearly seeing DevOps become mainstream. So what's being adopted? Where are we at in terms of DevOps? Now this is this metric. I&O is the browny, greeny colour, and blue is application development delivery. And what we're really looking to do in these areas is you can see that processes which enable or resemble DevOps, both of them are over 60%. In terms of quarterly release or faster, unfortunately, development is still significantly faster than operations. Right now, the biggest bottleneck in DevOps is work product coming from development hitting that operations roadblock, and unfortunately, there is still a huge stop sign there saying, stop, 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 you cannot go any further, I don't trust you. And anybody into DevOps, you know that DevOps is about a trust culture. It's about a learning culture. It's about learning from the mistakes that we make and implementing net new features and functions and processes. A great example of that was the Amazon S3 failure earlier this year. Amazon put their hand up and said, we made a mistake. It actually turned out an operator may have keyed or coded something incorrect. And what happened? S3 went down. You know, it was really interesting when the S3 region went down, because one of the first things that went down was the metrics that monitored the health of S3. So you couldn't tell S3 was down because the metric was down. But anyway, after they brought it all back up, one of the things they said is, we are not going to actually put more manual process in place. What we're going to do is redefine the way we do work, so this can't happen again in an automated fashion. Many of you may not know, but Amazon actually does significant triage and work on redefining, re-architecting, doing normal operations functions right where you're working and you don't notice, because they have automated and instrumented those processes. So where is DevOps adoption? What areas and domains is it in? Well, you could probably tell me things like mobile apps, which is at almost 70%. And that's logical. B2C applications, business-facing applications, are actually highly identifiable with DevOps. We also see a new growth area being e-commerce websites, but IoT, with its emergence, has become a huge area at the moment. And we're certainly seeing a lot of interest in IoT and DevOps. And why? Because we're radically changing the way we use and leverage the Internet of Things technology. The interesting one that's added to the list this year is internal applications. We're finding that internal applications have reached an end-of-life scenario where people are actually going and reworking them, refactoring, restructuring, maybe even rewriting them. We're seeing a large adoption of platform as a service, for instance, right now, and that is typically being leveraged and used for the redevelopment of internal applications. So as we move on, where is the DevOps heat by industry? So if you look at this, I can tell you right now that highly compliant organizations, insurance, banking, and finance, is significantly adopting DevOps right now. You know, the publicly identifiable examples, Barclays Bank, of course, in Australia, the Commonwealth Bank, and National Australia Bank, high adoption of DevOps. And we're seeing that from an automation, a process perspective, as well as a culture and process internally, or how we change things. We are seeing also the telecommunications industry rapidly adopt DevOps. Both those industries have one area in common, and that is the change in the competitive nature of their businesses. Banking is now highly competitive with fintechs, insurance with insurance techs, and so on. A great example from China is the insurance industry in China is rapidly refactoring and rebuilding their applications, leveraging DevOps methodologies, and building it totally on open source software. So they're going to the market and using open source and open source first. And this actually is true of all of DevOps. DevOps, we've seen a predominant leveraging and usage of open source technologies. So also, if you look at this manufacturing, you might expect to be hotter because manufacturing, fundamentally is automated. Manufacturing has just started to really grow as well. Now, we run this DevOps heat map every year, and next year I'm hoping I get to a point where I can retire it because everybody is hot. So let's hope that happens. So what's the value prop of DevOps? And this is something that's changed on my inquiry calls. My inquiry calls used to be from practitioners, ops and dev, and they would say, okay, how do we do DevOps? And of course I'd go, well, grab the DevOps handbook, grab this document, grab this website, here you go. But the reality of it is, what I'm hearing now is, how do we scale DevOps? How do we go from a couple of teams, lines of business or departments, and how do we take this enterprise-wide? How do we scale this? Well, I can tell you right now, the traditional silos, functional silos, will not scale. If you're looking to take, and I hope nobody is here, your traditional ITIL processes and take my incident team and my problem team and my change team and my dev team and make DevOps work, You may do it, and well done. If you do, give me a call. I'll write a case study on you. But the reality of it is it will fail. Because one of the things I hear in these I hear in these organizations, these types of siloed organizations, I hear all the don'ts, but I don't hear the do's. I hear that you cannot do this because it contravenes this. I hear this in banking. We have these rules in banking which say the same person who writes the code can't implement the code. Okay, that's a constraint. We can deal with that constraint. Forward-thinking organizations are dealing with that through automation. What they're doing is automating their pipeline, and as they automate that pipeline, what they'll do is the developer will push the code, and as they push the code, it'll go through automated testing. As it goes through automatic testing and passes the automated testing, by the way, it will move. That'll be an automatic approval. As it moves to that level, it'll go to the staging area, so it might merge with some more codes. It'll run regression testing, et cetera, et cetera. Passes that, another flag is set, and then we've got a deployment methodology of blue-green or canary or immutable or even dark releasing. And at that point in time, we can auto-release into production. There was not a manual stop or check mark or change advisory board meeting in that example. Modern DevOps organizations are doing that. This year is the year of push direct to production. I'm seeing it more and more. And as we see this, what are the value props? So if you downloaded the 2016 DORA or Puppet State of DevOps report, one of the things you will see is that high-performing organizations not only do things faster with less lead time, but they have higher quality metrics. They are delivering code with less defects than those who are not. And that is counterintuitive to what our old frameworks tell us. Our old frameworks tell us that by putting more controls in place, we'll actually deliver more quality code. Having lived in that world for a long time, I can tell you the converse is true. If you implement good process, you'll actually deliver better code. Now, let's talk to the business and ask the business. And so one of the exercises we recently did was we talked to business. We said to business, are you happy with your rate and pace of change? Surprisingly, 36% of them said yes, which leads 64% to saying no. We are not happy with the rate and pace that ops and IT are delivering at. I don't know about you, but if my boss is unhappy with my work 64% of the time, I won't have a job for long. So I got to twist that metric around the other way and at least get 64% success, right? So we've got to do that by satisfying what the business wants. We still see, and this is up significantly from last year, that approvals still are manual. I love talking to DevOps organizations. I say, Rob, we're really great into DevOps. We got this great CI process and goes this great automated testing process and gets into this great testing and staging process. Oh, but then we have to wait for the change record. What? Yeah, then we manually enter a change record and then ops go away and have this change advisory board meeting called the change rejection process. None of you have that, right? If you do, don't tell me. And then we wait 3 weeks and we get a schedule and we roll out. I said, what do you do with that? Oh, they said, we fixed ops up. We just moved our app to the cloud and we automatically deploy now. And I think, oh, that's good. What happens when compliance finds out? But the reality of it is we have to get around that. We actually have to look at how we're going to do that. And one of the interesting things is that the biggest problem is still lack of automation. Now, you're all here, I hope, because you love Jenkins, right? That's why you came here. And if you don't love Jenkins, you probably soon will. But the reality of it is it really orchestrates and automates pipelines. The reality is I've been in IT for a long time, longer than some of you are old, and the reality of it is I have been automating since day one. What the heck is wrong with you people? Now, actually, nothing's wrong with you people because you're here. But those that aren't here, they're still not automating. And one of the problems that we have right now is we have lots of automation in IT, but we have silos of automation. So when you pass from one stage to another, you drop the baton. Olympic runners practice and practice and practice for relay races. Yet almost every year you see somebody in one of the races drop the baton. And right now, that's what's happening in organizations. We have a fundamental issue with release velocity. It is our single biggest issue right now. Right now, this is recent data. This only published today. You're seeing it day one. Right now, if I look at release velocity of monthly or better, 18% of North American organizations deploy monthly or better. 1/8. Europe is slightly better at 20%. Woohoo! And of course, Asia Pacific is at 18. Our friends in Latin America, not so good, but anyway, they're getting better already. They're catching up rapidly. But the reality of it is, if you look at this by business type, very small business, less than 12%. Medium business, about 20%, but enterprises are a bit better at 23%. So and this is a really big survey, by the way. Later on when you grab the slides or the PDF for this session, if you don't get it through the conference, send me an email and I'll happily send them to you. The reality of it is that we need to get better at this. So if I look at DevOps automation by feature, I can tell you right now that only 45% of people actually automate the CI/CD pipeline. That is low. That is poor. That is a great opportunity for improvement, and that's probably why you're all here. But the reality of it is we have to get better at that, and deploy to production is at 45% as well. So the reality of it is that we're actually doing some automation, well done, but the reality of it is that you are hitting the wall somewhere where you're actually not automating across the whole life cycle. You need to look at that. You need to break down these silos of automation. And one of the tips and techniques I want to leave you with today is you need to look at automating the entire pipeline end to end. Organizations that do this get very, very good. So I'll give you a great example. I was on a plane flight from New York, where I live and work. I know you can tell it easily by my accent. But going from there to California. I love Wi-Fi on planes. In fact, I was on my way over here yesterday from Atlanta. And we have one of those new 737s with fast Wi-Fi. You can use it from takeoff to landing. It's really cool. And it actually works at a reasonable pace. And you can do VPN, if you know what that means. That's what they said in the phone on the overhead, if you know as well. So I was watching somebody who works for a cloud company, and I won't say who it was, and they were a developer. And while we're on the plane, they coded and pushed 5 separate changes to production. 4-hour flight, 5 changes. They took a change off the backlog, they coded it, pushed it, got the test results back, amended an error or a bug or a defect, whatever you want to call it, went back, resubmitted, it passed the testing, and then I was watching them on their screen, and they said, "Watch this, Rob," and I was watching them. Then it went successful testing, successful regression testing, deployed to production, smoke test in production, successful, change approved. End to end. There was no interaction with the change advisory board. There was no interaction with anyone else. End-to-end change. And they started on the next change. They pulled the next change off the backlog, coded it. This one was a little bit more complex, so they pushed a button, and the bill of materials identified it was a complex change, sent it straight to peer review. The peer review happened, got the message back. Now watch the pipeline again as it took it all the way through. This time testing passed successfully, change went to production. Now I've just turned a 45 to an hour-minute process into 1 minute. But the reality of it is, 4-hour plane flight, 4 changes, 4 items put off the backlog, submitted, and in production. How many of you can do that? Please don't put your hands up, I don't want to know. But the reality of it is, that's the world we're getting to. That's the rate and pace and velocity that business is expecting. Some other research we're doing right now is, I can now talk about DevOps to executive leaders. They call me and say, "Rob, we're totally committed to DevOps." Well, that's good. Then their next question will obviously be, "Rob, what does DevOps actually mean?" It's a buzzword, I heard. I read about it in the airline magazine. Don't joke, it really happens. And or I was talking to Amazon, and Amazon told me that this was the right way to go. So the executives say, "Yeah, we're all in DevOps." Oh, that's good. I like to hear that. And then what will happen is, as we move down the chain, we all know it's easy to say and hard to do. And I'll say, well, how have you changed the culture? Culture? We've got to change the culture? Yeah, we've got to stop and break down those functional silos and form into product teams. What's a product team? A product team is somebody that is accountable for the whole product, from the backlog curation to selecting what is used in the backlog, to the user stories, to the coding, to the deployment. By the way, testing's in there too. Sorry, I didn't say that. To the release. And then, one of the things I love about certain organizations now is they say, if you write the code, you own the code. Isn't it funny how if you own it in production, you suddenly take a total different look at it? You suddenly go, yep, I don't want to be fixing that bug anymore. Forrester research tells me that you, as developers, spend 20% of your time coding. What are you doing for the other 80%? Heck, I'd love it if I could go to work 1 day a week. But I have to go to work 5 days a week. Actually, 7. I work for Forrester. But the reality of it is that you've got lots of other stuff to do, because lean methodologies mean you're testing, you're developing, you're working through the process. But the reality of it is that if you could just get 4 hours more a week to code, that's a significant uptake, right? That's a 50% increase on your coding time. So one of the things we see with high-performing teams who have an automated process, who deliver in an automated manner, they can get back significant time to do value creation. And whether you're in ops, building an immutable environment, or you're doing the security scanning or the security testing, and we'll be having a great DevSecOps panel in a little while, right? Whether you're doing that or you're doing basic coding, getting back 4 hours a week, which represents a 50% increase, is huge. That is cool. So what we have identified in this particular graphic, you'll see this report published in the very near future, and this is the data that's going into it, is we have discovered that in an end-to-end DevOps pipeline, there are 2 major failure points right now. 2 areas where automation is breaking down. One of them is when we merge to trunk, and we actually hand off the stack to somebody else to do testing. We have to get rid of that and put a pipeline, a continuous pipeline in place. And we've done a lot of talking about that so far today in various sessions. The other point that is breaking is when we deploy to production. And I've talked a lot about that already. Once again, if you put a common pipeline in place, a common pipeline that goes everywhere from CI push right through to deployment, you end up in a situation where you have what I call automation of the pipeline or continual deployment. This is a key aspect of what we need to do. This has to be a pivotal area of our focus going forward for success. And I think that's one of the areas that I encourage you strongly to look at and think through. Because here in my oversimplified life cycle, and I'll be very clear with you, this is simplified, all right? I have another version of this, but you wouldn't be able to see it because there's lots of 0.2 fonts on here. But the reality of it is, if you think about it, right, from when you get an idea to when you check that source in, to when you build and test it, to when you do your static code analysis, your integration testing and your regression testing, and all those things, right now you have many processes joined together, gluing that. One of the key things we're seeing forward-thinking organizations do is they're understanding that, and they're developing pipelines, and they're saying to the development team, just merge to trunk. The pipeline will take care of everything from there. If it breaks, if your change breaks, you'll get it back. And at that point, you'll get it back with the error reports and the error logs and all that data, and you can then go and look at it. By the way, another thing we're looking at is automated testing in this regime. Not just automated testing in terms of testing the code stack, testing for the error conditions, also testing for success cases, testing for load. I heard a great story on Monday. DevOps organization had rolled and deployed a piece of code. And what they did is they didn't realize, and they deployed it worldwide. Now, it worked fine in Australia and Europe and the US, But when they went to the African continent, where Wi-Fi is not so good as it is in our areas, they actually found that the latency killed them and killed the app. Now, that's an error condition you could absolutely test for, simulate, and you should be simulating. And once again, that's a lesson learned. They didn't go and beat anybody over the head with that. What they went and did is they took that error condition and they added it to the test set. And when they came up with that error condition, they realized that for that particular implementation in that particular geography, they needed to take a different approach to implementation. They actually had to implement locally. So these are lessons you learn on the way through. So what are some of the steps to getting to be a highly productive DevOps organization? Don't expect this list in the next few minutes to be exhaustive. It's an exemplar list. It's an example. There's some things you want to do. The first thing I tell people to do is people come to me and say, hey, Rob, we want to do DevOps. So what we're going to do is grab Mary, Joe, Bill, and Stephanie, and we're going to allocate them part-time to DevOps. Anybody who thinks that'll work? I don't see any votes for that one. It doesn't work. If you're going to do DevOps, it's a full-time job, released from all other duties. If your boss says, won't you do that, don't do it. Put your hand down, don't volunteer for the task. You're setting yourself up for failure. So what I say, and then people say to me, well, how do I fix this? Well, I say, first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a value stream analysis. We're going to look at your processes. So you grab the team involved in a certain delivery, a certain application, and including app dev, testing, QA, security, database. Put them in a room. Give them all a little wad of sticky notes. Do an old-fashioned Kanban board and look at the process, end to end. And then start using the theory of constraints to understand where the delays are. And you will quickly find a whole bunch of redundant processes, wait time, things that you could streamline. And you don't even have to use an automation tool. You just need to make an executive decision as a group to chop some things out. It's a very simple way of doing it. You can do it. You don't need any help. You can just get in a room, order some pizza or whatever it is you like. For vegetarians, order them a salad. But get in a room and just do it. And pick that process and look for it. So you're going to look for things like wait time. Let me tell you, start with change approvals. That'll be the first one you want to grab. Because you are always waiting for 73 people to approve a change. And then they always ask the same question. Who ordered this change? Why do they want it? What is it doing? Which systems is it impacting? Did you tell George? We laugh because we know it's true. Right? And then, oh, George is on vacation, so he can't do the change this week. Oh, I love that one. I always find out that George is always on vacation, always on Fridays. I don't know why. Oh, by the way, you can only implement Sunday between 1 a.m. and 1:03 a.m. You've heard that one too, right? And by the way, you have to be on site when we implement, but you're not allowed in the data center. I mean, these things are, all right, now, there was a reason why we had this rule in 1921. Back when I started in IT, I can tell you that technology was unreliable. It didn't work properly. Technology is highly reliable now. Highly. Failure is low. It's rare. It works. And pretty much, if you don't test your code and it fails, you deserve to be in there at 3 o'clock in the morning to fix it. Organizations like Google have come up with a concept called the SRE, or Site Reliability Engineer, changing the role of operations, or the former role of operations. And Home Depot has adopted it as well. And this role is really about understanding the infrastructure component and how we deliver it, and it's reliable, highly configurable. It's actually produced in a consistent manner. So instead of hugging servers, I'm not sure that you have any server huggers left because you probably wouldn't be here if you did. But the reality is, instead of hugging servers, we actually do them in a repeatable manner, right? And if you look at these people, they're dealing with capacity and things like, having the things we need so that we can scale. But if you look at the way we deliver technology in that way, if it's infrastructure as code and consistently repeatable, and you've got unlimited technology stack there, whether it's private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, or on-premise, it doesn't really matter. You can scale it at will. Why are you worried about infrastructure? If you get a metric back that says I'm constrained by infrastructure, you just deploy more. Sounds simple, right? Actually, it is. Believe it or not, we came up with it with VMware years ago. And we've actually gone and scaled that. So they're the types of things, the rules that we had were written before we had those things. You need to go back and review those rules and get rid of them. We need to remove organizational functional silos. We need to get rid of them. We need to be moving more to product teams. Now, we all are aware of a two-pizza team. You've all heard that before. I must say, some of the two-pizza teams, they must be really big pizzas because there's a lot of them. But the reality of it is, or in my case, I can eat a whole pizza on my own, so I guess a team's two where I'm concerned. But the reality of this is, if you think about it, we really want to get the right disciplines there. We want to get some coding people there. We want to get, if you need an enterprise architect, you get them in the team. If you need a DBA, because it's a highly database-centric product, you should have them in the team. Security, absolutely. One of the methodologies of security, and I know this is a question for the DevSecOps panel later today, is, we need to transition those security skills and get them into the teams. Because you can't always get a sec specialist, right? So the security teams need to be thinking about actually understanding the security aspects of your business and delivering you an API or a piece of code or something you can call. So in the early days of these product teams, what I see is security people being attached to the team for a couple of sprints. They transition the skills, they set up the test sets, and then as you push the code out, it will test for the security parameters. I said something very enlightening that I got beaten up with on Monday when I was talking on DevOps. I said that penetration testing, which is often done and a major delay to going to production or it's done in production, should be moved and simulated as a test set and put in development. So you test on full simulations of the production instance, leveraging the same technology you'd use in production with penetration testing. Now, I know some penetration testers, and by the way, I have a long security background, for those who don't know, told me, oh, you can't do that. That's against the rules of security. No, it's not. In fact, testing early and often is great. Same is true as audit. I heard that last week. I was doing another conference. We can't do DevOps. Audit say we can't. Now, I, for fun, write audit standards. I know I'm strange, all right? And I enjoy it, which is even stranger. But the reality of it is there's no audit standard that says you cannot do these things. What the audit standard tells you is you need evidence. So you need to include your audit components in the product so that you can track it and trace it. So what do? You use what is now called in the industry continuous audit, and you have audit move left in development as well. You have the product teams, you get the auditors to jump out of their little ivory audit tower, get them to come down and work with you as a product team and help you do it. I've talked a lot about change and making change smaller. You have to get change sizes smaller. It decomplicates change, it makes change easier, it helps you understand what you changed, so when that code comes back, you can quickly revise it. I'm an awesome coder, but even I make mistakes. Actually, I'm a pretty average coder, so I know I'm going to make mistakes. But that's why I'm up here and not coding. But the reality of it is that, anybody, all sufficiently complex code will have bugs. Great guy called John Hughes taught me that in 19... And it's still true today. It is true, so you've got to allow for that. So you've got to go through the cycle. So you do smaller batches, you do that coding, you test it, you put it through the life cycle. Now, you may not deploy it. You actually might do a couple of sprints before you deploy, and that's okay. But as you merge it and merge it and merge it, you're going to be doing a wider test set to prove it works. I am a strong believer, if you leave here with no other message today, it is automate. That's it. If I leave you with just that message, I'm happy. We have to look at it. And we have to automate in a single pipeline. You can see here, from the process. And this is going to become even more true as you adopt technologies like microservices and containers. You started to code in 12-factor apps. You'll know that 12-factor apps talk about this a lot. You can't actually humanly control the process of a complex application using microservices. It's impossible. I can't do it. Well, some of you can, but generally we can't. The reality is you need to automate the process so that you look at the builds and you understand how all those pieces go together. Technology will help you. Technology will get better at it. Technology will help you understand where the gaps are, where the shortcomings are, where the dependencies are, and where the issues are. I did a session earlier today, and I didn't put this slide in because I thought better of it. Maybe I should have. But the reality of it is, if you look at what I believe you should do, and I talked about audit a minute ago, you need to understand what your control points are, where they are, where your audit and where your governance points are. We all have governance. All of us live in compliant organizations, and if you don't, you will. I can tell you right now that the whole world runs on software. Every business is dependent on software, and the level of compliance is only going to get stronger. For those of you who live in Europe, GDPR starts next year. And whether you like it or not, GDPR is a matter of life next year. For those who don't know, that's the European Data Protection Act. It guarantees a number of things, such as the right to be forgotten. And it guarantees them across all the European Union, and I guess the Brexit country as well. But the reality of it is you would think, oh, I'm in North America or I'm Latin America, it doesn't apply to me. Or I'm in Asia. Well, it does, because if your business does business with Europe, it applies to you now. Simple things like, before you ever record data on a customer, you have to ask for their permission. And if you don't, you will be found guilty of violation of GDPR, and you will then be issued a wonderful fine of 4% of total revenue worldwide. Take that. By country. So let's say there's 33 countries, and 33 times 4 equals 102% of total revenue. That means I'm out of business. You like that quick math? That was good. I made it up. It's actually right. It's a bit of a shock. But the reality of it is that's really not going to happen. But the reality of it is that, if we go forward, you've got to start doing that, because I actually believe we'll end up with GDPR-like legislation all over the world. Not just Europe has it. Malaysia has a similar set of laws. It's called POPI. South Africa has laws, and Australia has laws as well. We're going to start to see these laws be enforced. The human population is going to demand it. So you need to allow for that. You need to update your test sets for that. You need to make determinations. That's a control point. What it says is certain workloads will only run in certain countries. You need to update for that. You need to allow for that. You need to enshrine or implement those rules. The only way you can do them is through automation. You need to be able to recreate versions of software for legal reasons. Therefore, your repository needs to be versioned. You need to know what happens in each version. So you better be having a really good backup of all that archive you're using. Doesn't matter where it is, you've got to be doing it. And then more and more, your world is going to be API integration with partners. You need to control those API sets. They need to go under change control. They need to be an asset that you manage, right? And we need to start thinking about this, because APIs are soon going to be something under programming control. You're going to test them. You're going to run them through a lifecycle. You're going to deploy them. It's becoming quite critical. So we're reaching a world now where we talk about releasing complete versions. So one of the things we've seen happen recently is people are now releasing, instead of just releasing a code, we're going to update ABC program. What we're doing in a holistic approach, so we can release and deploy and back out, is we're actually adding an instantiation of application, infrastructure, middleware, and database. Forming that into an as-code environment, an instance or an image of that will be kept, and you can use and leverage that repeatably across the whole life cycle. Some of you in this room, I know your organizations are already doing it. Well done. But the reality of that is you can recreate any version at any time. You can deploy any version at any time. You can do analysis with testing tools at any time because you know what the complete stack is. You know what changed straight away by doing a comparison straight away of the stack. Leveraging the bill of materials to create this and understand. You can also do things like risk analysis. Pulling the bill of materials into and analyzing the bill of materials allows you to understand what's changed, what the impact is, and whether it's a low, medium, or high risk change. Yes, you can automatically populate your change management system as well, but I don't have enough time to talk to you about that today. So as I go to an end, I want to give you a really great use study. This case study published about 4 weeks ago. It's actually of an organization called Dynatrace. Dynatrace in 2011, 100% of their defects were discovered by customers. 100%. They implemented DevOps. They went and said, okay, this cannot continue. We need to transition this. We need to bring this under control. They leveraged DevOps. They transitioned to a cloud-based infrastructure. They applied great principles of DevOps, things like feedback loops, testing, automated deployment, automatic rollout. Earlier this year, they went and looked at their data and they opened up their books to us. 7% of defects are now discovered in production. And they can turn around any defect in production and resolve it and give the client a fix in 48 hours using DevOps. Not bad, huh? Pretty cool in terms of They can release daily if they want. They can release hourly. In fact, they can release so quickly their customers can't take it, so they've actually had to slow down their release cadence. It's kind of interesting. Because they deliver all their software through cloud now, every customer is up to date at all times. They've got rid of that backlog problem. The way they've done it is a significant introduction of process, pipeline, automation, and testing. They find 93% of all defects in testing. If you went back to your management and told them that you will now find 93% of all defects in testing, they will sign up tomorrow. But once you say it, you better be committed because you're really up for this delivery and you have to deliver it. So as we move forward, one of the things I share with people, continuous delivery is critical to success. You can't do everything at once. Pick your battles. Understand where they are. Understand how you're going to go about automating that tool chain, that pipeline. You have to automate end to end. Silos of automation will not be successful going forward. And as you move forward, one of the things that you will start to deliver is as you get your DevOps process right, you'll move into an era that we call biz DevOps, where you're going to start to deliver an automated pipeline, automated tool chain, and the new world of IT is that coding is not just happening in IT anymore. Business units and lines of business are now actually writing code themselves. And they're going to hit a push button. And if you've delivered an end-to-end DevOps pipeline, they hit the button, goes into merge to trunk, it understands the impact and risk, looks at the testing set, sets the testing set, runs the testing automatically, understands the risk and impact, the artifacts that are going to be impacted by this change, where it's going to be deployed, and it rolls out in production. You don't say, Rob, that's never going to happen. Well, actually, it is already. Already, there are several cloud vendors who deliver their applications and their application stack in this manner, and already we are seeing examples of customers who have put the expertise to build the products and services their business is offering in the hands of the business analysts sitting in the business, moving into production. Yeah?
Yeah, I've seen it with trading rules being implemented in the Groovy window. They put abstractions that make it easy, and the business analyst can write a new rule in terms of how they process an account.
See, and that's a great example, right, in trading rules. And actually, that's a great example as we move forward. So time, which is our friend, has now become my enemy. So we have 60 seconds left for me to say thank you very much for putting up with my North American voice for the last 45 minutes. And I wish you well on your DevOps journey. My email address is up here. If anybody wants a copy of these slides, just drop me an email. I'm sure that they'll come out anyway as part of the event as usual. Follow me on Twitter. Believe it or not, my Twitter feed is a metric that I'm measured on. I don't know why, but it is. So please help me. But the reality of it is, my whole mission, my vision, my passion is to take DevOps, help it go mainstream, help you do what you do well, and turn each one of you. In fact, it would make me so happy if you're all up here next year instead of me, and you're all talking about this, and I can run a panel and just quiz you all. With that, I say thank you and enjoy the rest of the conference. I can take a quick question. If those who want to leave, leave, and I'll take questions to those who want to stay. So traditional QA indeed gives us the guidance, the guideposts, what we want to do. So what we want to do is look at QA as a function, and we want to turn their function into automation. And what we want to do with the QA people is have them focused on guiding us in what QA should look like, how it should look. So let's turn them and leverage them as the experts they are, get their hands out of the muddy work, and get them into guiding us. So we can take their expertise and absolutely lever it. Let's turn it into code. Let's turn it into automation, and let's do it automatically. And one of the things you'll find is if we turn QA into an automatic process, we can do more of it, not less. And I'm a strong believer in QA and all those functions. They're awesome. Let's not toss them out. They're relevant. They're really relevant. Same as security. Let's turn security into security as code. Let's get security to write the security modules we need and deliver those so that we can all use them. And by the way, it's a mind shift. And the people normally go, but it works. It works. Thank you. I would love to say manual testing is done, but it's not. We are seeing manual testing decline dramatically as the manual testing process is put into automation now. But what we're actually doing is taking those manual testing processes and scripts and using those as guidance into developing the real test sets. There are some tests that still need to be done by humans. We cannot get rid of them all. But even things like AI is helping us do user experience testing better in an automated fashion. Probably 2 or 3 years away from that being automated. But there's always going to be the odd, let's just say we take my passion, my former passion, banking. A new retail banking app, we probably want to actually have some human interaction to start with. But we see a lot of capturing of human patterns, ethnographic research of usage of systems, turning that into testing scripts and then running that now. So it's not dead yet. Yeah. Uh-oh, I better run. Yep. So that was a day into 2 or 3 minutes, right? Did I hear right? Absolutely. Yeah. So when you do your ad hoc testing, do you grab those ad hoc results of processes and pop them back into the testing script?
Yeah,
Well, with that said, I actually have to formally end this part, so anybody who wants to grab me in the hallway, please go ahead. I really want to thank you all. Great, thanks for coming.